Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at your temperature and precipitation forecast for your trick-or-treating time period. So from now to about Halloween night when people usually go trick-or-treating. Before we do get into the video though, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload when I do upload. Now we start off here with the National Weather Service and all of these warnings over the central and the central part of the country including the Rockies. That's all from your system. That's going to be your winter storm, which is actually Winter Storm Besley, and that's going to be moving out into the Ohio Valley and out into Canada. And you see in that purple, that's winter weather advisories, anywhere from Utah to about Illinois, and then winter storm warnings in those pinks, mainly in the higher elevations, right around Denver. I think Denver's actually in winter storm warning. If not, they're right in the winter weather advisory. And then we have red flag warnings up for parts of California, and then we have hard freeze warnings, hard freeze watches, high wind watches, high wind warnings. All the warnings and advisories basically centered over California. We have air quality alerts in those grays, and that's pretty much all associated with these fires. And we're gonna kind of be seeing a dip in the jet stream that'll be allowing some cooler air. Hopefully that does actually help out with those fires. We have some freeze watches over in effect for parts of Texas, and then some high wind watches in effect for near the Buffalo area in upstate New York and the Great Lakes. And it's pretty quiet over the east, but as this system does actually continue to move on, it should get a bit more active in the east and a bit more colder as it brings down some of that cold air, and that cold air will kind of permanently, not permanently, but it'll stay for quite a while over parts of the Northeast and the Great Lakes states. Now, we're going to start off here with your trick-or-treat forecast for 2019. And here are your temperatures from the European model. So we're going to go with your we're going to start off with your low temperatures from Wednesday morning. So Wednesday morning when you're going off to work or you're going to school, your temperatures are going to be right around in the 22 even some teens over the Rockies, and below average, I mean not below average, below zero over most of these areas, over Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho, Montana, and then getting into southern Canada, and that's mainly in the higher elevations, the higher elevated areas, but the surrounding area is still in the teens and single digits. And then once you get a little bit away from that, in those reds, that's about 20 degrees or so. And then once you get into those light blues, almost a white color, that's about the 32-degree area, anywhere from about 30 to 40 degrees. And then once you're in those blues, that's about 45, 50 degrees. And then you see for the southeast, you're in the 60s and 70s for your daytime lows. And you see over California and over the west, you're actually getting some relief from all that warm weather. You've actually been seeing 90-degree weather. A couple of days ago, you had 90 degrees in Los Angeles. So that definitely was kind of fueling the flames. Hopefully, this does actually tame the flames a little bit with those cooler weather, and hopefully something can be done to help everybody out in California with those fires. Now, as we move on to your high temperatures for Wednesday or tomorrow, and you see high temperatures not getting out of the 30s and anywhere in those light blues over anywhere in the Midwest to the Rockies, and then not getting out of the 20s teens or single digits over parts of Colorado, Wyoming, some areas, some higher elevations of Montana, Idaho, and Utah. And then over the east, your high temperatures in the 70s and 60s, so well above average, about 20 degrees above average, in fact, over those areas. And that's kind of on the leading front of this winter storm. So currently at this time period, it would be dumping snowfall over most of these areas. Actually, kind of a bit farther back. So let me actually redraw that. It would be more over Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa, and then mainly by the night of Halloween. So the time you would be trick or treating, it would be going there. It would be going up to Chicago, southern Wisconsin, and then into Michigan. But you kind of see that big temperature gradient where on this side you're seeing 60s, on this side you're in the 30s for your high temperatures, and that's all associated with that system. And once it starts to move through, it'll definitely change up the pattern. Now, as we go to your low temperatures for Thursday, so Thursday morning, going to work, going to school, temperatures are going to be in the 20s widespread over the Midwest into the South Central U.S., and then uh, back across the West, also in the 30s and 20s. And then once much more defined, easier to see. This is your warm sector here with this system. So by about Thursday, the low pressure system is actually over the Ohio Valley, but is still dumping snow over this about this area of the Midwest, and that's bringing some warmer temperatures to the east. But once that passes through, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, D.C., and down the I-95 corridor, you're all going to be seeing temperatures in the 30s, and then of course once you get further south, maybe in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, depending on how far south you are. And then your high temperatures for Thursday or Halloween are going to be in the 70s over parts of the Northeast and then stretching into the Southeast. And once you get into Florida, Georgia, and coastal South Carolina and North Carolina, you're going to see potentially the 80s and 90s, especially once you get down to right around Miami, Orlando, that area. You could be seeing in the 90s. And you see very sharp air, boundary of cooler air and warmer air right in front of that. So definitely, maybe even some shorts and t-shirt weather over parts of the southeast and even into the northeast, and then some cooler air right behind that. Now, for your low temperatures, so this would be for November 1st in the morning, so Friday in the morning, right when you're getting ready for school and work, you see that leading front has kind of gone past, and you see all down the I-95 corridor. Once you get to about Florida, you're in the 30s and 40s, closer to the coast. So you see a good area that was in the 70s, now in the 40s and 30s in the morning. So definitely a big drastic change. And then once where you see that this is mainly the area that's gonna get about 6 inches, which is forecasted by the models. You still see that snowpack reflecting the sunlight over parts of southern Wisconsin, Iowa, northern Illinois, and that's why you're seeing actually that pocket of teens for your low temperature, while the surrounding areas to the north and south are in the upper 20s to low 30s for your lows, which is still very cold for this time of year. Now, here's your temperatures for your Halloween trick-or-treating time period. So this would be about 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. So this is right around that time so whatever time zone you're in, you kind of have to figure it out, but it'll be generally around this time, even if you're on the East Coast and you're not going to be trick-or-treating around 8 o'clock or maybe 6 o'clock or something like that. Still, generally going to be around the same temperature. So we're going to kind of zoom in region by region, moving from the northwest all the way down to the southeast. So starting off in the northwest, we're going to kind of break this down city by city. So these are your temperatures when you're going out trick-or-treating. So this would be 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Seattle, you're going to be around 43 degrees. Portland, right to the south of you, 42 degrees, and then Redding, California, that's going to be 65 degrees. Now, Helena, Montana, you're going to be around 33 degrees up in those higher elevations. You could be in the 20s. Boise, Idaho, 39 degrees. Once you get to the north and east of there, could be in the 20s, but that's mainly higher elevations. Now, down to the southeast, or southwest, I mean, still Pacific time, and you're going to be seeing San Jose right on 73 degrees. Los Angeles 75 degrees, and Phoenix, Arizona 73 degrees, and then Las Vegas 58 degrees. Las Vegas a bit cooler, a bit higher elevated. Now, as we move on to the Midwest, Fargo, North Dakota, 35 degrees, right on the border between Minnesota and North Dakota, and then Sioux Falls, 31 degrees, right on the border of Iowa, South Dakota, and Minnesota as well. And then Denver, Colorado, you're 29 degrees for trick-or-treating. So if you're over the Midwest and then the Rockies, you'll all have to be kind of bundled up for this trick-or-treating night. Now, Omaha, Nebraska, you're going to be 34 degrees for your trick-or-treating. So that would be Central Time. Now, this is also Central Time, the South Central U.S., Albuquerque, New Mexico, 40 degrees for your trick or treating. Amarillo, Texas, 41 degrees. You actually saw about 4 to 6 inches of snow a couple of days ago with that system. So very early snowfall and very significant snowfall at that. And then Houston, Texas, 49 degrees, and New Orleans, Louisiana, 54 degrees, and Oklahoma City, 37 degrees. And Oklahoma City is going to be further north, so it's going to be a bit cooler there than it would be, say, in Houston or New Orleans. Now, as we get into the Corn Belt or the Great Lakes, you're going to be at Minneapolis for your trick or treating, 27 degrees. This is in Central Time, by the way. Now, so this would be about 7 p.m. Central Time. Des Moines, 32 degrees. St. Louis, 36 degrees. And then Chicago, 30 degrees. And then Louisville, 37 degrees. Now, as we move on to the Northeast, you're going to be seeing 43 degrees for trick-or-treating in Detroit. And once we get into the Eastern Time Zone, you're going to Eastern Time for DC, right around 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 74 degrees still. That front still hasn't moved in. We're still, all that warm air is still being suppressed to the east. But then once that front passes, right behind it, 40s and 30s for DC, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and then stretching into northern New England. Then Buffalo, New York, about 60 degrees, so a bit cooler, especially since you're a bit further north. And then Boston, 64 degrees. And then New York City, 68 degrees. Now, finally, for your southeast, you're going to be in Nashville, about 42 degrees. Mobile, Alabama, 50 degrees. And this would be in Eastern Time, by the way, so this would be about 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Miami, 78 degrees. Atlanta, 50 degrees. Wilmington, North Carolina, 75 degrees. Now, we're going to look at your temperature anomalies from the EPS. So this is the European Ensemble. So it puts a bunch of those models together. So this is a better, more accurate, or more reliable way of showing the temperature anomalies. So see well below average over the west, and then as we keep on moving on, so this will be by tomorrow morning, still well below average. Some areas, this would be in Celsius, by the way, so about some areas right around 25 degrees Celsius below average. This is about 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit below average. And then you see over the east, in front of that system, you're still above average over these areas in the east, pretty much all the way from about eastern Texas, so coastal Texas, to up through Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Indiana, most of Ohio, and then eastward, you're going to be seeing those warmer temperatures, about 10 to 20 degrees above average. And especially as the front continues to move through, that warm air is still suppressed. So the closer you are to the coast, so the closer this system it gets to you, usually right along this is where you see the biggest temperature gradient. So behind here, you could be around 10 degrees below average, and then in front of there, usually you're right around 10 to 15 degrees above average. So definitely a big temperature gradient. And then you see that system continues to move on by Wednesday night, and then by Thursday morning, you see those really warm temperatures. That's about 10, 20, 30 degrees in isolated areas above average over the east, and then well below average, 10, 20, 30, 40 degrees below average over the west. And then we continue into Thursday night, and then this would be your Halloween forecast for your temperatures. And you see, this is right before the front is about to pass through parts of the northeast and the eastern regions of the southeast. And you see well above average conditions, 70s in the northeast. That's pretty rare to find this time of year. And then right behind it, about 10 to 15 degrees below average in Celsius, which is about 20 to 25 degrees in Fahrenheit. And then this system will continue to move on, of course, and push those colder air closer. Now, here's your precipitation from the NAM 12KL model. We're gonna go in 3-hour increments, and you see snowfall starting to develop, just some flurries, kind of joining with that other area of moisture, and you can kind of see how this moisture gets pulled up from the Gulf, which actually we were talking about yesterday in my video, if you did watch that, where how that moisture was actually being pulled up from the Gulf, and that's going to be fueling the system on the backside to produce some snowfall, since it has a lot more energy, moisture, all the components really, and it's going to produce about 6 to 10 inches of snowfall over some areas. As we continue to move on, you see a rain snow line developing, indicating a strong system. Usually most systems which are weaker don't really develop a rain snow line. It's either just a snow or just a rain, but this system is a stronger system, and it's gonna actually develop a rain snow line, and you're gonna see some very heavy snowfall bands. Most of this won't actually stick though, mainly because it's early in the season. It's still not even November. It's the end of October, almost November though, but still it's very early to see snowfall, and if this does actually stay on the ground, it should only be for a day or two. Maybe it'll make the air actually a bit colder, as we were talking about before. The southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, where the temperatures were in the teens, in the surrounding areas were still in the upper 20s. Some snow bands moving into areas like Chicago, which actually looks to stay in a mostly rain. It's gonna really be a mix between snow and rain. Could stay as snow for a little bit before the system really gets developed, and then turns to rain, and then on the backside you could actually get some more snowfall. So right around, I would say about 3 inches for Chicago, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. And then you see that's kind of some wraparound snowfall, and that's again not so reliable from these models. They're not the best. The NAM, I would say, is one of the best models on picking up wraparound though. So since you have to kind of sacrifice how far you can go out with the NAM, and for the accuracy that it provides, and that the NAM definitely is one of the most accurate models, but it only goes out 84 hours, so that's kind of the trade-off you get. But it's a really good model at showing that back end snowfall, so definitely this could happen because the NAM is showing it, and the NAM is the most reliable with that aspect. And then it moves out into Canada by Thursday, and then this is kind of your snapshot for your Halloween for your trick or treating. So over the west, basically nothing. The western 2/3 of the country, basically nothing. Maybe some snow showers coming down from about Alberta, Canada, and that's going to be over parts of North Dakota and Montana. But other than that, pretty much very quiet. Then once you get over to about Michigan, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, and then getting into even Ohio, you could be seeing some wraparound snowfall. So over these areas, you could be seeing snowfall when you're going out to trick or treat, and then very rainy over parts of the Northeast. But this rain shouldn't hit the big metro areas along the I-95 corridor until about a little bit later. So while you're still trick-or-treating, it shouldn't be raining over parts like Boston, down through New York City, Philadelphia, D.C., and then down into about Richmond, Virginia, and then all the way down the I-95 corridor. Shouldn't be raining for you guys as you're trick or treating, but then overnight this should pass through and then bring that colder air on the backside of this system. Now, that is now we're gonna actually look at our rainfall first, and this is your total accumulated precipitation. So in those greens, you're about a hundredth of an inch to a half an inch to 2 inches in those blues, 2 to 6 in the purples, and we don't have any amounts that are above about 6 inches. So you see a good area of above half an inch here, and that's stretching anywhere from about Texas all the way up into Maine. And then we have a couple isolated areas where some banding is going to set up, and that's where you could be seeing about 2 to 4 inches. Some isolated areas could see 5 inches out of this system throughout the next 60 hours. Now here's your snowfall total. So a tenth of an inch to 3 inches is in your blues, 4 to 6 in your purples, 6 to 12 in your in your pinks, and then if you do get a little bit of a green, that's about 12 plus inches. So you see over this big swath is going to be seeing at least a tenth of an inch. Now if you're more like a tenth of an inch, 1 inch, even 2 inches, that's probably not going to stick, especially if you're further south, mainly because the ground is still so warm. It's the ground temperature is probably above 32 degrees, and even some areas the air temperature is above 32 degrees, but snow is falling because in the upper levels of the atmosphere it's still 32 degrees or below. But most of the snow won't actually stick until you start getting into that 3 to 6 inch area. Some of that will stick. I would say about 2 of those inches would stick, and then once you get into the 6 to 12 inches, a lot of that will stick, and that's over parts of northern Illinois and northern Missouri, and then also some of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Now, that is going to wrap up the video. Please consider liking the video. It took a lot of effort to make this video, so I would appreciate that. Consider subscribing as well and turning on notifications so you never miss a video when I upload. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. That was Eli the Weather Guy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.